In this video, your cure to a boring Thanksgiving Day turkey this year: crispy, juicy Peking turkey with a delicious maple ginger dripping glaze. Stay tuned. Now, I start this process like I would when cooking any other turkey, which is struggling to pull the chunk of ice that encases the neck out of the center of the turkey, because no matter how long you defrost these things for, they always seem to be a little bit icy no matter what. Then we're going to remove the bag of giblets from the neck portion. Set those aside. You can use those later in your gravy or stuffing. Now here I have just our standard metal barbecue hook, and I want to hang this bird, but I want to make sure it's secure and doesn't fall during the roasting process. So what I'm planning on doing here is pulling the skin back on the neck a little bit and just drilling a hole straight through a couple of vertebrae down from the top of where the turkey's head would normally be. And this is going to give me a nice sturdy chunk of bone to sink that hook into, so that way I don't have to worry about this thing falling on me later on when I'm suspending it over a giant pot of boiling water. Now, once you're convinced that the hook is securely in your turkey neck, it's now time to dry brine your bird. And we want to dry brine instead of wet brine, because the wet brine will dilute the flavor of the bird and also make the skin harder to crisp. So here we're taking about 1.5% by the weight of the bird of kosher salt, sprinkling it on all sides and rubbing it in. And then we're going to hang this in our fridge overnight. But before we do that, I start second-guessing my confidence in that hook. So I grab my turkey hanger from the pit barrel cooker guys and shove it up the posterior of the turkey. Later on, I realize this makes my turkey way too long to hang, but I don't know that at this point. Also, into the turkey goes 2 star anise, 2 cinnamon sticks, about 4-5 green onions that I cut up and shove in there. We're doing a Peking-style turkey, so we want to use some Chinese aromatics. Sliced ginger, nice and long, thin slices. You can see I don't take the skin off because no need. And then half of an orange that I slice up and stuff into the cavity on this end. And then later we'll stuff that other half in the neck region. Now here I have some wooden skewers that I'm using to close up that flap. I don't have a ton of skin to work here, so I can't really do the whole sewing trick where I just use one single skewer to sew everything up. I also skewer the legs together just to kind of hold them in place and for the shape of the bird. And I come back with some small wire cutters and trim off the long ends of the stick because my kitchen shears are dull as hell. Next, I'm going to remove the wing tip and flap. These things just burn and get in the way during this whole cooking process. So we're going to preemptively detach that portion of the wing, leaving us just the drum tip. And the way that we're doing that is we're cutting above the flat joint on the drumstick side. We're cutting all the way around and detaching that skin and tendon. Then we're basically bending the wing back the way it's not supposed to go, compound fracturing it, and then cutting through the joint with a sharp knife. Next, we're going to take another wooden skewer and place it behind the wing tips on the drum here. And this is going to elevate the wings up and away from the back skin, allowing for better airflow, which leads to the maximization of crispy skin, which is what we want when we're doing a Peking style. Now, to keep that skewer from sliding out of place during the cooking process, I'm just going to tie down both ends with a little bit of butcher's twine, trim it up, and boom, there we go. We're going to take that other half of the orange and shove it down into this neck cavity just to give us a little more aroma penetration. And then I'm going to pull that skin back over around this hanger and then skewer that shut. And you guessed it, clip off the ends. Okay, now this is the point where you hang this in your fridge so that salt has time to penetrate the meat, keeping it moist and juicy during the cooking process, the dry brine effect. Minimum 12 hours overnight, best case scenario 24 hours, and as long as 48 hours. Now, I only had 36 hours to shoot this video for you guys, so we're going to pretend like I brined it overnight and skip to the next step. Now, here I have a wok full of water sitting on an induction burner underneath my newly installed ceiling hook in my kitchen with a chain hanging on so I can hang my turkey. Now, this allows us to take the boiling water underneath the turkey, ladle it all over the skin, and this shrinks the skin by basically breaking down the collagen. And the collagen, if it's not broken down, will bind to water and keep the skin from crisping. So this allows for a crispier, tighter skin. Now, you may be asking why I don't just put it in a large pot. Well, here's my largest pot. And as you can see, the turkey doesn't fully fit. Now also, if we just drop this turkey into a boiling pot of water, it's going to cool down the water really quickly, and it's not going to maintain the temperature. Now, if you don't have a wok, you can just use a pot of water off to the side with a bowl underneath it to collect all the hot water that drips off, but you're not going to look as cool. Now, after our turkey has had a thorough bath and is just hanging out, we're going to make our glaze with 2 parts real maple syrup, not the fake stuff, and 1 part good apple cider vinegar. Add to it a pinch of salt for seasoning, and then your second part of your maple syrup. Why did I do it like that? Well, because I didn't realize that I wanted 2 parts until after I tasted it. So that's why you taste stuff. Bring the glaze to a simmer, give it some stirs just to make sure that all the ingredients are getting to know each other and hanging out real nice. And a couple of dashes of soy sauce for some saltiness, umami, and also just to help darken the glaze. Kill the heat once the flavor is where you want it. Pat your turkey dry just to make sure that you don't have any excess moisture on the surface. And then you're going to start basting it with your warm glaze, and you're going to brush it all over, and it's a pretty thin glaze, so it's going to look like it's not doing much at first, but you don't want this to be super thick and gloppy. So a nice thin glaze, the stickiness from the syrup is going to adhere to this skin, and once you've thoroughly coated all areas of the skin on the turkey, you're going to let it hang out for 15 minutes and air dry, and then come back and apply a second coating. You're going to notice now, because you have that base coating, it's very similar to painting walls. Now your next coat is going to adhere better. Now you're going to repeat this one more time for 3 coats total. And if you have a little extra time, go ahead and throw a 4th coat on there. And remember, each time you're going to let this dry sitting at room temperature for 15 minutes, so that way the following coat has a chance to stick to it. Now here I placed that hook back in there because I had measured and realized that if I try and hang this on my smoker, it's going to be way too long. It's going to bottom out on the smoker and get all burnt up. Now, after you've applied your 3 coats of glaze, you want to hang this in your fridge. I'm just using a wooden dowel and spanning it across where my shelves would normally go towards the top of the fridge. And I'm going to hang this in here minimum overnight, but the longer you hang it, the better it'll be, the easier the skin will be to crisp. So you can hang this up to 5 days in your fridge, and this gives you a longer time span to execute. So then the day of, you can just grab your turkey and rock and roll. If you don't have room in your fridge, you can go ahead and just place it on a wire rack overnight and then skip to the next day. Now, when turkey day finally rolls around, I want you to get up early that morning, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and then hang your turkey in the center of your kitchen. This is going to allow the skin to dry out a little bit more before cooking. And when somebody walks into your house on Thanksgiving and they see a turkey hanging right in the center of your kitchen, they know you mean business. They know they're in for a good meal. Now, if this doesn't draw the attention of your guests, what I want you to do is grab your loudest hair dryer and start blow drying the skin of this turkey. This will surely bring everybody's attention to the fact that you have an amazing turkey being prepped in your kitchen and that you are a true culinary gangster. Plus, drier skin is crispier skin. After your blow drying treatment, you're going to set up your smoker. And here I have about 2/3 of a chimney of charcoal. And I'm going to light the other third using 2 wax cubes, because if you haven't noticed yet, I kind of like to overdo things. 2's better than 1. And we're going to let this go for about 15 minutes or until the charcoal becomes white and ashed over and is glowing red hot. Now, lighting just a portion of your charcoal and then pouring it on top of your unlit charcoal is called the minion method, and it allows us to control the burn of our charcoal so it doesn't get too hot. What we're shooting for here is about 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a good roasting temperature for your turkey. 3 chunks of wood of choice. I'm using pecan. Cherry wood is also great, any fruit wood. And here I have a extension ring for my Weber that allows me to hang stuff. I'm also going to set up my Pit Viper fan and plug it into my control board. Now, of course, this is purely optional, but on a busy day like Thanksgiving, I want to make sure that I have all my turkeys in a row. And this allows me to hold a steady temperature so I can focus my attention on hosting and cooking other stuff like delicious stuffing and some gravy. Now, with the Smoke Easy extension ring, which this isn't an ad, by the way, I just love this ring, it comes a little hanging device that you stick right on top, and this basically turns your Weber kettle into a pit barrel cooker. So if you have a pit barrel cooker, then you can use that, and really you can use any smoker that you want that can hold, a temperature of 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really any smoker. Now I'm going to use my controller on my phone, pretty nifty, right, to tell the fireboard that I want to set my smoker temp to 325. Then I'm going to take my other probe thermometer, I'm going to stick it down into the thickest part of the breast, and I like to push it all the way in until it hits bone and then back it out by about 1/4 inch. This is because bone acts as a heat diffuser, so if you're hitting the bone, you're not going to get a true reading. Now, once your smoker is up to temperature, go ahead and walk your turkey outside and hang it as shown here. Now, you can also hang this from the top rack of your oven if you don't have a smoker. And if you don't have the ability to hang your bird in your smoker, you can just lay it on its back in a roasting pan and smoke it at 325 like usual. However, hanging does lead to a better all-around flavor. Number one, it fully encompasses the bird in heat, so the skin crisps evenly. Number two, as the juices and fat come to the surface of the bird and then drip down onto the fire below, the juices and fat, they combust and they create these amazing complex aromatic molecules that baste the bird and give it that amazing smoky, roasted, soulful flavor that you can't get when you don't hang directly over a fire. Place your lid on top, cross your fingers, make a sacrifice to the smoke gods, and do whatever you got to do to hold that temperature at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes for every pound of bird you have, or more precisely, when that probe thermometer you stuck into the thickest part of the breast reaches 150 degrees internal, because it's going to cook up once you rest it. At that moment, you should be able to remove the lid, and your bird should look something like this. Oh my goodness, how gorgeous! Now, if you're a cool guy like me, you got one of these nifty tools that allows you to just grab one of these hooks and damn, I just dropped it. All right, well, it looks like we're using the towel method. Okay, so go ahead and grab a towel and lift this whole thing up. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Removing this from this setup was very precarious. If you got a buddy, grab your buddy because you'll need an extra pair of hands. Hang it in your kitchen and do a victory lap. Look at that thing. Now, this next step is very important. Well, kind of important. Pretty important. Let the bird rest. And let it rest for a long time. Minimum 1 hour. Yes, 1 hour. When I did this test, I let it rest for 2 hours, and it was perfect. You need to allow time for the juices in this bird to be reabsorbed back into the meat before you carve it, or everything up until this point is going to be for nothing. Now, when you hang it in your kitchen, make sure you hang it over a pan so you can collect all of the drippings. These drippings can be used, of course, to make your favorite traditional gravy, or a maple ginger glaze, which I'm going to show you right now. So take your turkey down, set it aside to be carved here in a few seconds once you finish your sauce. Now here I have some green onions. I'm just trimming off the root and cutting off the white portion. That white portion we're going to set aside, and we're going to char that for our garnish later on. And here to our pan drippings, we're going to add 1 cup of our leftover glaze from yesterday, which, if you remember, has the maple syrup and the apple cider vinegar. To that, we're going to add some homemade turkey stock, 2 cups, or you can use a homemade chicken stock, and then some sliced ginger. Add in the ginger and then zest 1 whole orange. And people really don't know how to zest citrus. It's crazy. See how I'm holding the zester upside down like that? And that way I can go all over this piece of fruit here, collect the zest, and then once it's all collected, I can flip it out, kadoosh, right in the pan there. No one does that. I don't know why. It's crazy. It's the best way to do it. Cut the orange in half, go ahead and squeeze it on into your liquid, and you're going to simmer this for about 15 minutes until the flavors start to concentrate and get a little more intense, and then you can thicken it with a little bit of a slurry. Now here I have a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of water. I'm going to stir this in, bring it back to a simmer, check it out, and I realize, it's still a little bit too thin, so I'm going to add another tablespoon of cornstarch, tablespoon of water, slurry in, and I'm going to reduce to my final consistency. And this is how you want to thicken with a slurry or a roux, because if you add too much, then your sauce is done. You can't really thin it back out. I mean, you can, but it's just going to ruin all your flavor structure that you worked so hard for. So add your thickening a little bit at a time, and then reduce to final consistency. Check it and taste it for flavor. Now, while that sauce is finishing to reduce, I'm going to take a little bit of cooking oil here and place it in a hot skillet, swirl it around a little bit, and dump it on out, so that way I have a nice thin coating, but my pan isn't overly oily. And once that pan is raging hot, I'm going to drop in the white parts of the green onions, season with some salt, toss, 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 until I have a nice char, and set those aside for my garnish. Now here I'm tasting the sauce for final texture and for flavor. I'm going to pass it through a strainer, toss in the green part of the sliced green onions, and set that aside. Now it is finally time to carve our Peking turkey. Remove all the wooden skewers and the metal hook. Cut off the rope. You get the idea. Pull out all the stuff that you had on the inside. All those aromatics are done, so you can just toss them. And then the carving is pretty simple. You're just running the knife down between the body and the leg and thigh region of the turkey. And you can see I open it up on both sides here. So that way I can flip it up on end, and I'm basically just running my knife through the joint and detaching that hind quarter. Same thing, running the knife through the joint as I'm pulling it away from the bird and detaching that hind quarter. Next, I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to slice down the center of this bird on one side of the breastbone. Doesn't really matter which side. And then with my non-knife hand, I'm going to start to slowly just peel that breast away. And you always just want to make sure that you're angling your knife edge towards the bone, because that way if you miss, you're chunking the bone instead of the meat. Repeat the same process on the other side to remove the second breast. Lay the breast beach side down. And then don't forget this beautiful back skin here. Go ahead and pull that off. That's a great little Scooby snack to reward yourself for all of your hard work. If you're feeling charitable, you can share that with your family and friends. Now, the muscle fibers of the breast run horizontally from wing to tip. So you want to make sure you're slicing from the tip all the way up to the wing horizontally in thin strips. This is going to shorten the muscle fibers, making the breast perceptibly more tender. Then for your leg and thigh, just run your knife between the thigh and leg joint, detaching the thigh from the leg. And then I like to just remove that thigh bone by running my knife along it and underneath it, and then cross cut the meat into some thin strips. And then I'll take my knife, scoop it all up, flip it skin side up, and then scoop it up and place it on the plate right next to my breast. Finish my presentation with the turkey leg right on top. Now, as you can see here, I split the turkey between two plates. That way it's much easier to pass around the table. Garnish with our charred green onions. Serve alongside a gravy or your delicious dripping glaze. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Peking turkey for your Thanksgiving Day pleasure. But wait, there's more. Check out our Thanksgiving Day resource page so you can totally dominate Turkey Day this year. 15 plus video techniques for your sides, gravies, and everything you need to be the baddest cook on your block. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like and share this video because, I mean, come on, you watch the whole thing. And happy Thanksgiving!